Miami is a magical place to live. Sun, lights, and beautiful ocean views, wonderful homes, incredible architecture, and a rich culture. One of the most iconic neighborhoods in Miami is Little Havana. In select parts of Little Havana, new rules allow developers to construct infill buildings without costly parking. This lowers the cost to construct infill buildings, creating a new opportunity for small developers and landowners. For Little Havana, it's a chance to recover and revitalize the neighborhood. This is the story of 769 Northwest 1st Street, the first infill building to take advantage of the city's new parking waiver. Built in Miami's Little Havana. 769 Northwest 1st Street by Tecela. Real estate innovation, building the best city neighborhoods.
This project for me is extremely important because it's the project that I've been dreaming about building for many years. Understanding the zoning, working with my architect to design it, working with 748 Development to get it built. This is really where I've put all of my efforts for several years, so I'm very happy to see it happening. And for Little Havana, I think this building is important because it shows a way to bring investment to the neighborhood without demolishing most of the existing buildings and displacing mostly the existing residents, which are the reasons that we like Little Havana in the first place.
It's an important building because it's a small infill building. It is a small scale building. Most buildings, you can look right behind us, are going to be very large buildings, and they're not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. So these buildings are they're compact. They are fit 50 by 100 lots, which is a typical lot, and can coexist with the existing building. So you don't have to knock everything down to have these buildings be here. In fact, this was an empty lot, so we're just occupying leftover space. So both old and new buildings can coexist in the same block.
La descripción técnica del proyecto es son dos townhouse que cada uno tiene 4 unidades. Tiene 3 niveles, nivel de planta baja o nivel 1, nivel grado, con una unidad, después en el segundo nivel otra unidad y en el tercer nivel 2 unidades. Entonces en total son 8 unidades para ser rentadas.
So the process for getting the parking eliminated was a long process. It took about 4 years. It started with the idea to change the zoning to allow it, writing the text of the law that would change, initially negotiating with the planning department, then forming a coalition of business and civic organizations that supported it, meeting with the city commissioner who agreed to sponsor the ordinance, and then going through the process of passing the law from the planning board to the commission in 2 readings and the final vote. So that was the process. It took about 4 years. A lot of people were involved and helped support the idea, and it became official in October of 2015.
Andrew is great. Andrew is really becoming a leader in this movement in Miami. He represents a person who is living in Miami and loves Miami and wants to see it improve. And I think he sees this building type, infill building, as a way to solve some of the problems. One of the big things that we did here is that we don't have any parking. And we all can complain about parking and it's a problem, but the idea if you build small scale infill buildings in the urban core, you can use public transportation, you can use ride-sharing programs, you can walk and bike, and you won't need to build all that parking. So he's envisioning, and then also the City of Miami Commission is envisioning a better future, one that doesn't rely on cars, and one that can be more sustainable and hopefully build communities at the same time. So that's a passion of his. I joined him with that passion. And it's been an exciting project to actually build as opposed to just think about. And this building is that building that allows for close proximities between people, but not disengagement from the street. So it's a little piece, the beginning of hopefully many infill buildings, townhouses in Miami, and hopefully we'll start more, and we're actually going to begin a couple more very soon. Our inspiration is other classic buildings from cities like Savannah and New York and Boston, low-scale infill buildings that make streets, provide housing for many people, and do so in a way that creates interactions with people and create a social life. So this is really a piece of a new kind of city for Miami.
This building is really great because I'm actually with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which most people wouldn't associate with new buildings, new construction, but what we're interested in is the entire neighborhood of Little Havana and the future of it. And so we're really excited to be able to highlight these types of projects and to identify them for future additional projects in the neighborhood, and to point to as a great example of new development in a historic neighborhood such as Little Havana.
I'm a big fan of Little Havana. I like Little Havana the way it is, but I'd like to bring my investment here to this neighborhood. And I think the way those two ideas are compatible is the increment, the scale at which this building happened, at which the investment happens.
Little Havana is composed of a lot of individual owners, which makes it unique. So rather than be a project that is about removing that ownership from many people and actually maintaining it, these little buildings can be individually owned. And I think that empowers the existing people. So it's not really an idea of displacement, but something that works within what's already here.
I tried to pay attention to the details in the project, but I also tried to draw a lot of inspiration from Little Havana and its existing buildings. The lots, the typical lots of Little Havana, the lot coverage of Little Havana, the height of the building, 3 stories, very similar to the construction materials, concrete slabs, cinder block walls, stucco exterior. All these things are the idea of the stoop. You'll see stoops on the old center corridor buildings, balconies, are a nice feature of some of the old Mediterranean Revival buildings here in Little Havana. So there are a lot of elements of the architecture that are inspired by Little Havana, but with a fresh contemporary take, and that's largely thanks to the architect, Jason Chandler, who is a very talented architect and shaped the style of the building on the exterior and in the interior. And I brought a lot of my own knowledge of apartment design. I've developed more than 1,000 apartment units, so I kind of have a bit of knowledge about what somebody might want to live in an apartment unit, but also what might make that unit stand out from what's typically offered in the market. It's actually been a real pleasure to work with 748, with Jorge and Jorge. And they brought to the job an experience being developers and being general contractors. They had sat in my seat as an owner and understood where I was coming from. And just like this is my first project as a solo real estate developer. This was the first ground-up new construction project that 748 had done here in Miami. So both companies wanted to make a mark, wanted to do something that could make an impression, and so even from the very beginning, we were working in the same direction. And with all the experience that 748 brought to the table, they executed very well on the project. The building looks like the renderings. That's one of the great compliments you can give to a project.
We want to thank Andrew Frey for letting us be part of this project. We know how important it is for him and his family, and that is a personal achievement, and we are very proud of being part of it.
Yeah, you could call it. It's very presumptuous to say. You could call it an epic love story. I don't know. Is that what you're? But the point is to love urban neighborhoods and what good urban neighborhoods can do for people, what they can do in terms of human understanding, economic opportunity, creation of cultural assets and practices, and understanding what the potential is to do good with the way we build our neighborhoods, fighting for that, putting in a lot of time and effort and expertise into building a building that is not just above average, but the best that you know how to do.
So I think it is something new, oddly enough. If you look at early Miami, right when it was settled, it was a city that had a lot of infill buildings, small-scale buildings, and for whatever reason, I think maybe just basically transportation in a car has changed that, but it's a return to that. It's funny that this is a building that doesn't have parking, and we think that's an amazing thing, except that when Miami was developed, all those buildings didn't have parking. So in a way, it's a kind of return to the way it began, which is an interesting thing.
Thank you, Little Havana, for your kindness and hospitality. We will keep working hard to grow with you as a great neighborhood.